All right, so now we're going to talk about activity navigation, specifically using explicit intents. And intent is essentially an object that we use to tell the Android operating system what we intend to do. We give it our intent. And we have to be very explicit about what we want to do if we're talking about navigating from one of our screens to another one of our screens. Or if we want to navigate from, say, our app to a very specific third-party app. Maybe it's another one of our apps. And so we do that with explicit intents. So right now I have just one activity in here. It basically just says, hey, we're in activity 1 and we have a button to activity 2. So when we click on this, we want to go to the second activity. We don't have a second activity in here yet. So a couple things to note. We have a button with an ID of to activity 2. And one of the things that I definitely want to mention here is if we wanted to change the color of our button, it's really important that we do it the right way. So before we start messing with code or anything, I want to show this. So if we do background, we have two options here, background tint and background color. So let's take a look at background color. So if we do accent, everything looks pretty. If we do background tint, it also looks pretty. In fact, if we zoom in here, we have actually some padding that white padding that's been added here. So if we do background, you can see it takes up the entire portion of that box. Now this is important for material design and some of the animations that come with buttons. So let me show you what's going on here. Again, tapping on this, nothing's going to happen, at least functionally. So when I tap on here, all you see is the button being raised and lowered. Now, if we do background tint and rerun the application, now we get this animation wherever we click within the button. So just understand that whatever version you choose to use, there are going to be some benefits and drawbacks depending on what effect you're looking for. Okay, so now we are going to add another activity. So we click on the package, and we're going to go to new, and we're going to go down to activity, and we're going to do an empty activity. And we can just we can call this second activity. If we had another activity that we wanted to do that actually was, if we're doing a real application, we don't want to name our activity second activity, third activity. We want to name it by what it is. So maybe it's a detail activity, or maybe it's a camera activity or something to that effect. Like it's supposed to capture the purpose of that activity or the chunk of time that the user is going to be spent in that specific screen or sets of screens. And that's something we'll talk about when we get to fragments. Now, the way that Android is moving is that your application will really only have one activity. Very rarely will it have two activities. And the only time when you might have two activities is when you're going to be doing deep linking. So that's kind of an advanced topic. But we have a couple of options here. We can generate the layout file. Almost always you're going to want to do this. So this will create an XML layout file for your second activity. You could conceivably have multiple launcher activities. So these would be registered to be shown in here. And so that comes in handy, especially if you have like certain activities that provide different functionality. You may split your application into several different functionalities. But it's rare, very rare to do something like that. That's why it's not enabled. And so when we do this, we get our Kotlin file, again, with our stubbed on create. And if we go to our layout file, now we'll have two activities. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wholesale copy and paste. This is dangerous, so you can easily make a mistake, but for sake of brevity, and we'll say activity 2 and dismiss. So the other place that I want to show you is the manifest. So if we go into the manifest, and this is kind of like what you would think a manifest would be for like a passenger ship. It would be a list of everything that is on that ship. And in essence, a manifest is a list of everything that's within your application that you want to make publicly available, or that the operating system needs to know about your application. And it's also something that is used in determining permissions inside the Android Google Play Store. So don't worry so much about this squiggly line. It's always there. This is a spelling typo. But there are a couple of things here. If you wanted to change your app name, you could command click straight into this and change your app name in there. That's displayed inside the launcher. One of the things here is that here's your main activity, and here's your intent for your launcher. So there are a couple of different categories that you could use. So we have launcher, and we have all kinds of other ones here. So we really are going to be using launcher, but there's also default, and that makes it so that your application is it's more of a utility application, and it's not something that you'd see, but it's more system related. That's kind of a rare one. You might have apps that support your main application, and you only want those apps to be accessible from your application rather than just being able to tap from inside the launcher. So that's the only reason why you would use that, or if you're trying to do something surreptitiously, we'll go with launcher. And then here we have our activity. Now, one of the things here is that, hey, it has an empty body tag, so you just space and slash. You don't need the space, but it looks nice that way. And then the other thing that you can do to add to this, because what I'll show you is in the layout, this is what it looks like. It looks virtually identical. In fact, it is identical with text change difference. But if you wanted to have that really cool back button up in the app bar, then what you can do is add Android parent activity name, and we can select main activity. So now if we go back to that, now we get that cool little button, back button. So let's leave it like that. And now we'll go into main activity. And again, we have that button, so we're going to do, we'll wire everything up. All right, and we can essentially do the same thing. Let's make this private. And why don't we do that for our second activity? And we'll say dismiss. Again, we don't have that set up, so we're just going to do that real quickly. And so now sometimes this may happen where the change in the XML file is not really displaying. So what you can do is just go to build and clean your project, and then once that's done, build and rebuild project. All right, so if that didn't work, let's double check to make sure we didn't do some sort of weird aha, and that's where we did it. All right, so by just going back to our first activity, it's as simple as calling finish. And there are a couple of other ones in there, so finish, affinity. This one will essentially close out your application. So it'll close all of your activities and close out your application. And then if we go back to our main activity, now we're going to do an explicit intent. So the way that we do this is we say, I'm being explicit here with everything just so that it's better understood. And so in here, if we do Command P, we can see the parameters that it wants. So the one that we want is the one with context, the one with package context, and class. So the package context is the context that you're in, so you can type in this. And then from there, we have this class. So second activity. And the way we do this is 2 colons, class.java. And now we can just say start activity with the intent. And to second activity intent, and that's it. So let's run this. All right, so if we tap on this, it takes us to activity 2. If we tap on this, it takes us back to activity 1. And if we tap on this, and we tap on this, does the same thing. To activity 2, and brings us back.